Everyone at Fort Colson Medical Center called her the quiet one. She emptied trash cans without being asked. She never raised her voice. She kept her eyes down in hallways, like looking up cost something she couldn't afford. Nobody knew that 3 years ago, her hands had held a dying soldier together in the dirt of a place that didn't officially exist. Nobody knew her real name. Then, on a Tuesday morning in March, a helicopter screamed in low over the parking lot, and a name was shouted across the trauma bay that hadn't been spoken aloud in 3 years. Her name. The real one. Hey, before we go further, welcome back to Silent Heroes. If you're new here, hit subscribe, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and guess this. How many years do you think she spent hiding who she really was? Now back to the story. Fort Colson wasn't a big base. It had one clinic, one general, and one nurse nobody bothered to learn much about. Her badge said Maria Colt. Nobody had ever asked her to spell it, and that was exactly how she wanted it. She was 34 years old, though the lines at the corners of her eyes made her look older, the kind of tired that doesn't come from bad sleep but from bad memories. Her hands were steady, always steady, in a way that made the younger nurses whisper. There was a thin white scar along her left forearm, the kind that only forms from a blade, not a fall. She always wore long sleeves. Always. She had learned, a long time ago, that the fastest way to survive was to make herself small. Small enough that no one asked questions. Small enough that no one remembered her face after she left a room. She moved through Fort Colson like a shadow that filed paperwork. General Marcus Reyes ran the base clinic like it was still a battlefield, and he was still winning wars nobody else could see. He was 51, broad-shouldered, silver at the temples, the kind of man who filled a doorway just by standing in it. He had built a career on looking capable in front of cameras and blaming everyone else when things went wrong. His favorite line, the one he used on Maria more than anyone, was simple. "Colt, stay out of my way. Adults are working." He said it in front of patients. He said it in front of staff. He said it so often that nobody even flinched anymore. Nobody except old Mr. Whitfield, a retired sergeant in Bed 14 who'd been in and out of the clinic for 2 years with a bad heart. He watched Maria change his foreline one afternoon, watched her hands move too fast, too sure, too practiced for someone who was supposedly just a nurse. "You've done this before," he said. "Not a question. Not here. Somewhere else. Somewhere worse." She didn't answer. She just tucked the blanket tighter around his legs. "Whatever you're hiding," he said, "it's the only interesting thing about this place." She almost smiled. Almost. By 6 o'clock that morning, the base had been quiet. By 6:47, it wasn't. Sirens first. Then the thunder of rotor blades, too close, too low. Then the doors of the trauma bay burst open and 4 soldiers half-carried, half-dragged a 5th one inside, his uniform soaked black-red down the side. "Move! Move!" General Reyes was already shouting, waving people into positions, his voice booming with the confidence of a man who believed volume was the same thing as competence. "Pressure on the wound. Get me a line in the right arm, now." Maria was already moving. She saw what Reyes didn't. The wound wasn't the wound. The blood loss was too slow for an arterial hit, too fast for venous. Internal. Somewhere higher, somewhere hidden, a bleed was filling a space that shouldn't fill. His breathing was shallow, uneven, his neck veins bulging like something was pressing from inside his chest. Tension pneumothorax. Textbook. And it was killing him in real time. "Sir, it's not the arm," she said quietly. "I didn't ask you, Colt." Reyes didn't even look at her. "Get me that line." The soldier's lips were turning blue. The wounded man's eyes fluttered open for half a second. His hand, shaking, grabbed at the air near Maria's sleeve. "Ghost," he rasped. "Ghost actual. Is that you?" The word hit the room like a detonation. Nobody moved. Reyes turned, slow, confused. "What did he just say?" Maria's jaw tightened. Her hands, for the first time in 3 years, weren't steady. "I don't know what he's talking about," she said. "Too fast. Too flat. Explain yourself, Colt." She said nothing. The silence stretched, thick and dangerous, while the monitor beside the bed began to scream a warning nobody but her seemed to hear. The monitor screamed. Nobody moved except her. "Move," Maria said. Not a request. She stepped past Reyes like he wasn't there. Her hands found the soldier's ribs, counted intercostal spaces, steady now, sure now, the tremor she'd carried for 3 years simply gone, vanished, like it had never existed at all. Tension pneumothorax. Right side. He needs decompression now or he's dead in 90 seconds. She grabbed a 14-gauge needle off the tray before anyone could stop her. For the people watching, here's what was actually happening. When air gets trapped in the chest cavity and can't escape, it builds pressure with every breath, crushing the lung and eventually the heart itself. It's one of the few battlefield emergencies where a single needle, inserted at the right spot between the ribs, can save a life in seconds, and where hesitation is the only thing that kills. Most people never see it happen. Maria had done it more times than she could count. She found the second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, and pushed the needle through with one clean motion. The hiss of escaping air filled the room like a held breath, finally released. The soldier's color changed almost instantly. His chest, which had been rigid as stone, began to rise and fall on its own. "He has a chance," Maria said quietly. The room stood frozen. Nurses stared. A junior medic actually dropped his clipboard. Reyes stood there, his orders unfollowed, his authority undermined in front of 11 witnesses, his face shifting from confusion to something colder. "You're suspended," Reyes said 20 minutes later, once the soldier had been stabilized and wheeled to surgery. "Effective immediately. You disobeyed a direct order in my trauma bay." "No," Maria said. "I am just done hiding." A crowd had gathered by then. Nurses, techs, even Mr. Whitfield, wheeled out from bed 14 to watch. Nobody spoke. But nobody looked at Reyes the way they used to either. That's when the second helicopter landed. 3 officers walked in, senior to Reyes, one of them a colonel with a folder under her arm and a look on her face like she'd been waiting 3 years for this exact moment. "Where is she?" the colonel said. Not a question. Maria stepped forward. The colonel's eyes went wide, just for a second, before her composure returned. "Captain Elena Voss. Call sign Ghost Actual. 2 silver stars. A bronze star with valor. Credited with saving 11 members of her unit during an ambush that officially never happened, in a country we don't officially name." The colonel turned to Reyes. "She's been listed as a protected asset in witness relocation for 3 years, General. And you've spent that time humiliating her in front of your entire staff." Reyes's mouth opened. Nothing useful came out. I had no way of knowing." "You had a personnel file you never read," the colonel said. "You were too busy being the best doctor in the room to notice you weren't." It got worse for him from there. Buried in that same personnel file, investigators later found, was something else: falsified trial data. Reyes had been quietly funneling clinic patients into an unapproved drug study, funded by a private contractor, padding his name onto research papers he barely understood. The soldier who'd been shouting Maria's call sign hadn't just been wounded in the field. He'd been misdiagnosed twice under Reyes's care, his injury made worse by a treatment plan built on falsified numbers. When Reyes realized what was surfacing, he panicked. He grabbed a scalpel off the tray in the same trauma bay, backing toward the drug locker, shouting that nobody was taking his career. Maria didn't flinch. "Put it down," she said. "You're not the only one in this room who's killed before. I just never wanted to." He lunged. She didn't. 3 seconds, 1 wrist lock, 1 scalpel skidding across the floor. Old training, muscle memory, nothing that needed to be said out loud. Back in surgery, the soldier's heart rate dipped. 88, 74, 61. "Stay with me," Maria said, her hand on his shoulder as they wheeled him in. You called my name. I heard you. I'm not losing you now. His hand found hers, weak. Knew it was you, he whispered. Nobody forgets Ghost Actual. 58, someone called out. Pressure dropping. Push fluids. Now. 62, 70. He's climbing. Got it, Maria said quietly. 3 weeks later, Reyes was gone, stripped of rank, under investigation, his name already fading from the base like it had never mattered. Maria was reinstated, not as a nurse this time, but as director of a new trauma response program named for the exact kind of emergency care that had saved that soldier's life. She still wore long sleeves. She didn't need to anymore. She just liked them. Mr. Whitfield was there the day the new sign went up outside the clinic. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just nodded, the way people do when something finally makes sense. "Told you," he said anyway. "Only interesting thing about this place." She laughed. First time in 3 years anyone had heard her do that. Here's the truth this story leaves behind. The people who talk the loudest about being in charge are rarely the ones who actually save anyone. Real strength doesn't announce itself. It shows up quietly, does the work, and only speaks when a life depends on it. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe to Silent Heroes so you never miss the next one, and tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in that trauma bay? The next story is already waiting. The end.